Hello, beautiful homemakers. We're continuing with Secrets of Fascinating Womanhood, Chapter 7, Secret 4. All organizations need a leader. A ship needs a captain. There needs to be a single person to make final decisions in important matters. A ship cannot have two captains. The family is no exception. As we read earlier, God has placed upon the husband this right to finalize important family decisions, but only after consulting first with his wife, and if need be, with his children. The man is the head, or the ship's captain of the family, so to speak. We women are his first mate and the heart of the family. Kathy spoke. But what happens when we disagree with the decision he makes? Well, Kathy, we must support our husband even when he makes a final decision we don't agree with. However, if you strongly agree with the decision he has made, you should tell him so, but in a gentle, loving voice. You must also tell him, at the same time, that if he goes ahead with his decision, you will still support him. It is very, very important that we honor our husband as leader in our home, for God has not only made him the leader, but also the shepherd of our family. And on Judgment Day, God will be asking him to account for the state of his family's souls. That's a large burden. Now, class, I'm going to write a very emotional word on the board. This is a word many women reject angrily. Yet it is probably the most magical quality a woman can possess, if she wants to awaken all the tenderness and love in her husband. She turned and wrote, Submissiveness. Both Bev and Beth reacted indignantly. Angela felt mixed emotions. The teacher held up her hand for silence. Then she smiled and said gently, When we follow the leadership of our husband and are submissive to his wishes, there comes into our homes a sweet spirit of peace and harmony. Our husband's heart is softened by our yielding spirit. It awakens his tenderness, his sense of protection, and most of all, his deep love. Bev scoffed and said in a hostile voice, You're saying I should be obedient to an old drunk? We never criticize our husbands in Fascinating Womanhood, but yes, Bev, submissiveness is an important part of Fascinating Womanhood. That's why so many women hate it. That is asking too much, snapped Bev. What if he makes a wrong decision? And boy, he's made plenty. I don't trust him. I'm a better leader than he is. Angela was shocked at the vehemence in Bev's voice. The teacher's response was calm. All men make mistakes, Bev. Some just hide them better than others. We women make mistakes too. That's how we all learn. We just need to be humble and willing to trust our husband's decisions. We must be prepared to risk our security, our comfort, and our money if need be. We have to give him the reins and trust him to learn. In the long run, it will be for the best. Remember, God has placed him at the head. Let me read what a Christian writer, Orson Pratt, wrote about this back in 1840. The wife should never follow her judgment in preference to that of her husband, for if her husband desires to do right but errs in judgment, the Lord will bless her in endeavouring to carry out his counsels. For God has placed him at the head, and though he may err in judgment, yet God will not justify the wife in disregarding his instructions and counsels. For greater is the sin of rebellion than the errors which arise from want of judgment. Therefore, she would be condemned for suffering her will to arise against his. Be obedient, and God will cause all things to work for good, and he will correct the errors of the husband in due time. A wife will lose the Spirit of God in refusing to obey the counsel of her husband. "Those are lovely words, teacher," said Elsie. "I firmly believe them to be true." "Thank you, Elsie. Yes, I also testify that those words are true. F.W. teaches us true principles. Yes, these principles conflict with modern ideas, but they are still true. And because they are true, they work. Of course, most husbands will largely delegate decision-making to us when it comes to running our household. After all, that's our own domain. But even so, he still has the right to the final say in all matters. And for women who have lots of questions about this, I highly recommend the book Me, Obey Him by Elizabeth Handford. How your children benefit when your husband leads. Our children also feel secure when male and female roles are clear. When their father is respected as head of the family, and both father and mother present a united front. A warm, loving father who leads and encourages his family, and a gentle, feminine mother who remains at home while they are growing up, almost always guarantees that our children will mature into well-adjusted adults. Nearly all psychologists agree on this. Of course, most of the time we are happy to let our husbands lead us, but there are times when we want things our own way, especially when it comes to where to live. Women use all kinds of pressure on their husbands to influence them in this area. We may not want to leave our parents or our friends or our familiar surroundings. But remember secret number 1, accept him. We must accept his judgment, even if it means postponing our dreams. It's the difference between a happy marriage or being happy alone. Even when we feel he is wrong, we must give him the ball and let him run with it. Happiness and true love are found in warm, affectionate relationships, not in houses or localities. Elsie spoke. "I agree with all you are saying, Harmony. I probably wouldn't have 30 years ago, though. But now I know that what you are teaching is true." "Thank you, Elsie. However, there's one point I would really like your guidance on, and probably the others would too. What if her husband is about to make a really serious mistake? A decision that we know for certain is not the right one?" Good question, Elsie, and there is an answer. Now let's assume that we've already given our husband our views in a feminine manner, but he's still determined to go ahead with a disastrous decision. This does happen. It has happened to me a few times, and I'm going to share a little secret with you that has worked every time for me. This is what I do. I don't say another word to him. I remain quiet. I just offer a silent prayer in my heart to God that everything will turn out for good. Not to change my husband, but just that everything will turn out for the best. And do you know what happens? Every time this has happened, my husband changes his mind. Dramatically. Just like that. Every time has been a miracle. I never needed to argue or oppose his decision. I testify to you, class, prayer has great power when we are trying our best to live right, and we have done all that we can do ourselves. Elizabeth Handford also covers that extensively in her book, Me, Obey Him. Helena, you have a question. Yes, my husband is very much the leader in our family, but I think sometimes he's too hard on our children. I tell him so. They're good teenage kids. Am I right in doing that? Well, Helena, unless your husband actually injures your children, we should let him have a free hand. We should not undermine his authority. We women tend to be more gentle in disciplining our children, but children respect a firm father. It won't do them any harm as long as they feel he loves them. More harm is done by lax discipline in the home. Ask any policeman, he'll agree on that. In a sad situation where a father does physically abuse his children, living the first 4 secrets of FW will nearly always solve that problem. However, intimate abuse of children by a father is of a totally different matter. You never ignore that. If that is happening, you must immediately separate your children and yourself from him, for that kind of abuse by a father can do enormous damage to children. Sonia shyly raised her hand. Yes, Sonia? I would love my partner to lead me, but he won't. I often have to take over, especially in money matters. We're just coming to the problem of a husband who won't lead his family, Sonia. Thank you for raising it. Now, when a husband won't lead, the reason is usually ingrained lack of responsibility or low confidence in himself. Perhaps he was spoiled as a child or never admired by his parents. Irresponsibility in a man is a very difficult problem. As parents, we must be careful not to shelter our children too much from the harsh lessons of life. We are not doing our children any favors long term. However, when we live the first 4 secrets of fascinating womanhood, accepting him, admiring him, making him number 1, and allowing him to lead, we cannot help but raise a man's confidence and, hopefully, his sense of responsibility. Fortunately, a man's sense of responsibility usually improves as he ages and has children of his own. However, he may still cling to past bad habits. You will probably need to encourage him to overcome them, so here's what to do. First, remind him that it's his God-given role to lead you, and that he is therefore qualified to do so. Even though he might not believe in the Bible, read him at least 1 Bible scripture about his leadership role. Bible scriptures have a power all their own. You could well be surprised at the powerful long-term effect on your husband of a Bible verse on his masculine role, even though he might scoff at first. Truth is powerful and has a certain ring to it that is hard to deny. I'll list 3 good ones on the board. Make a note of them. The first one is one we read earlier, Genesis 3:16. Ephesians 5, verses 22 through 25, and 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. Second, tell him that you need him and want him to lead, and that you trust him. Then hand over the reins and let him go. Don't take them back again, no matter what happens. Support him 100%. Allow for his mistakes. Praise his successes. He will nearly always grow into his role, and you will blossom in yours. The sensitive area of finances. Now we're going to enter the war zone of finances. This is a very sensitive area in marriage because it's tied so closely to your husband's sensitive pride. It is also tied closely to our womanly need for security. Before we look at who should handle the finances, let's listen to this tape of a typical husband-wife discussion. Listen to how easily a husband's pride can be hurt and how misunderstandings easily arise in financial discussions. I'll comment as we go along. We hear the husband speaking first. He's just arrived home from work and is looking at a bill that came in the mail that day. It sure takes a lot of money to raise a family nowadays. He's hoping for some admiration from his wife on his ability to provide. Well, it's not my fault. I scrimp and scrape to make ends meet. Other women buy more expensive clothes than I do for me and the children. She has wrongly taken his remark as a criticism of her spending habits. Now he gets defensive. "I earn more than most men, and you don't have to go out to work like other women." He is still desperately hoping for some appreciation and admiration. His sensitive male pride has been deeply hurt. Consequently, his anger is rising. She says irritably, "Yes, well, as soon as Mike starts school, I'm going out to get a job and earn some money. Then maybe we can afford some new carpet for this house. It looks awful." She has just broken the first 4 secrets. Her husband feels angry and resentful. He also feels a failure. His self-confidence and esteem have plummeted. Now let's hear how a woman who lives the principles of FW handles the same situation. Of course, ideally, she would wait until after she has pampered him a little and after he has eaten, before letting him see the bill, preferably unopened. "It sure takes a lot of money to raise a family nowadays." "It sure does, and you're managing so well, darling. It must be a big responsibility for a man." She has intuitively sensed the importance of this moment, and has stopped what she was doing and come over and squeezed his hand, and is looking him in the eye as she speaks. "Well, I don't mind the load, but yes, it can be tough at times." His confidence and self-esteem have doubled. He's feeling manly inside. His love for his wife soars. "I'm lucky to have you for a husband to care for me." He's just put his arm around her shoulders and kissed her cheek lovingly. The teacher switched off the tape. "That is fascinating womanhood in action," she said, smiling. "And yes, she might have laid it on a little thick. But men don't mind. Even a lazy, irresponsible husband will change when he's inspired like that. I get letters from women who have gone through this course, and they often tell me that their husband's income has increased greatly since they've been living Fascinating Womanhood. Now, who should manage the finances? Who did God make responsible to provide for the family? Remember what God said, "By the sweat of your face you shall obtain your food." Adam, right? Or in other words, our husband. Our role is to support him and spend his money wisely. But his responsibility is to provide and manage the income. Another question. Whose role is it then to worry about the finances? "Well, ours, I suppose," said Diane. "Both of us," said Angela. "It's my husband's role," said Helena. "I don't want to worry about the bills." Yes, Helena is right. We women should not have to worry about money. That's our husband's role. We women worry too easily about money. A man is much better equipped to worry about such things. Most men would rather work harder than worry about money. That's the way God made them. We women are different. Worry dulls our feminine charm and sparkle. We become depressing to our husbands. We can't function properly in our role. So put the worry on your husband's shoulders. Put it where it belongs. Let him provide and manage the money. Then boost his manly confidence and watch him take care of the problems. I must add, however, that although our husbands should carry the burden of the finances, we still need to know enough about what is going on to cope if our husband were to be taken from us or become very ill. Let's be realistic about this. We women do live longer than men. But while you're both healthy, put the worry fair and square on his shoulders where it belongs. "You're not saying that our husbands should do all the shopping, are you?" asked Elsie. "No, we do the regular shopping, Elsie. Besides, most men hate it. Let me suggest a simple plan that works with most couples. Some of you are probably doing it already. Sit down with your husband once a year and, under his leadership, work out how much money you, as the homemaker of the family, need each week to cover the housekeeping expenses and your personal needs. These are the expenses that are normally paid for at the point of sale: groceries, clothing, toiletries, petrol if you have your own car, but not the electricity, water, trash, or mortgage. Those bills are his concern. This amount becomes your household allowance, or budget, and is provided for you each week or month by your husband, and perhaps also partly by a government child subsidy for some women. This allowance is yours to spend as you see fit. No questions asked. Any money you save from your allowance by being thrifty belongs to you to spend as you wish. All other expenditure, including all bills that come to the home, are paid for by your husband without you having to worry in the slightest. "Sounds neat," said Sonia, giving a rare smile. "What about investments?" asked Diane. "Yes, also investments. Don't worry about them. Let it all go. Trust him. Don't concern yourself. Providing for the family is his area. Let him worry about it. You will help him much more by being a delightful, feminine wife. Even if he should lose everything, with your support and the knowledge he will learn from his mistakes, he will soon bounce back. Most millionaires have gone broke several times in their life before they've learned enough to be highly successful with money." Helena spoke. "My husband Spiros and I handle the finances the way you recommend, and it works well." "Yes, Helena, it does. My husband and I do it that way, too. I haven't had to worry about bills for years. So many problems are avoided by using this method." "Sounds like heaven," said Sonia. Beth raised her hand. "Yes, Beth? It certainly doesn't sound like heaven to me. That means if I'm not working and want to buy something for myself and I can't save it out of the housekeeping, I have to go and beg my husband for the money. I would hate to do that." "Beth, that's the common attitude with many women. But really, it's only pride at the bottom of it. We have to lay aside that female pride. It causes no end of trouble in our marriages. You see, men love to buy things for women they deeply love, when they can afford to do so, and even when they can't afford to do so. It makes them feel manly. It thrills them. However, an important part of awakening that deep love in men is that we women ask, not beg, for our needs. We learn more about this in secret number 9. A woman who supports herself, or continually sacrifices and does without, will not be loved as deeply as a woman who asks her husband for her needs. It's better that our husband spoil us a little. Really, it is. Let's end it there, even though we are in the middle of the finance chapter. And there's a lot more to say on this subject. This subject is usually the one women tackle last. And sometimes your husband will say, "You're my helpmate. I want you to handle the finances." And that's that. Well, this is a secret of being happy and being taken care of. This is not an end-all situation. Don't throw up your hands and say, "I can never do this." Just listen and decide later if you can do it or not.